professor. Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah, so let's begin. So here are the first question. Can you some background information? So can you introduce your religious belief and your parents' occupation, and are you have any sister in your family, and what their choice for marriage, like their arranged marriage or their free love marriage? Yeah.
Okay. So I should look here, this one or this one?
Very casual.
Very
Yeah, maybe
casual.
this one.
Okay, this one.
Yeah. Don't ignore us, just
Or you can just look at her or.
Okay.
Or me. Okay. This is okay. This is okay.
I look everywhere.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so I am born a Hindu. I don't really practice my religion too much, little bit, because of culture, culturally brought up doing many things which are religious, but I don't necessarily do them because I'm following my religion. Oh, there are many questions. And I don't have any siblings, I'm an only child. I do have cousins, and so far, I think all my cousins have married someone that they met and fell in love with. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, all three cousins, they're sisters.
Yeah.
First cousin sisters, all married someone that they met and fell in love with. But also depends, I think, on what class I'm from, like upper middle class background. So I think perhaps more freedom, more exposure, more chances to be outside the influence of your immediate family. So more freedom and chances to meet others.
So both all of your fathers are free love marriage.
All of my father.
But brothers.
My brothers?
Sorry.
None of my, I don't have any, my cousin brothers haven't gotten married yet. My
I
sisters,
see.
cousin sisters. Yeah, all the ones, 3 of them have gotten married. So there are many more left. And all 3 of them have had love marriages.
I see. So what about your parents? They are arranged marriage or?
Parents are arranged marriage. I think for my
Ah.
parents' generation, it was very unusual to meet someone outside
I see.
family circles and to like get married. Maybe a little bit easier for men, but I think especially for women, difficult.
I see. So
Can we ask like how your parents know each other? Like,
Sure.
someone recommend them to.
Um,
What's the process?
Yeah, I don't know exactly how, but maybe through some families, someone heard, like it's all, again, also determined a lot by social status and social circles, I think, and hierarchies and things like that. But basically, how it works is that someone in the family, some extended relative or close relative would hear that, oh, I've heard that this family is also looking for someone to marry their son or to marry their daughter, and also like for some religions, the horoscope matters, like what your calendars say. If the horoscope says that they are compatible with each other, or if they get married, something it might not be too good. So they would check things like that, and if after that, of course, there would be like at least, again, doesn't have to happen in every circle or every social hierarchy. But in this case, of course, they also meet, and at least with the families, in the presence of the families, maybe not too many times without family around, but quite possible. And if everything is okay, then they would get married.
So, how's your grandmother and your grandfather?
I think that's completely arranged. Like, I know the story of my dad's parents and my mom's parents too. In the village circles, they would know that, oh, this daughter is like quite eligible, and like he's quite like, he seems good, so you both have to get married. And but I think in those times, like especially for one of my grandmothers, I think they would just see a picture of the person they're going to marry, and if picture looks okay, and also depends, like sometimes maybe the parents will just arrange it, so you don't really get a say. So I think it can be in many different ways.
So what do you think the proportion of arranged marriage and free love marriage in like different classes are different? So what do you think the proportion?
Oh,
of
you.
the
I have no idea
Maybe you can
directly.
guess.
Yeah, my guess would be that
I mean, in nowadays,
in India,
Like,
Um,
like in your relatives.
in this modern society,
yeah,
so in different classes, what the proportion between arranged marriage and free love marriage?
I think it's still heavily skewed towards arranged marriages. I don't know, maybe as much as like 90% or more would be arranged or something.
90.
I think so, but I have no idea. I've never looked it up. I'm just judging in accordance with what I think are social hierarchies playing out, and also like how many people are actually able to speak up to their families and say, like, doesn't mean that relationships don't occur, but it's difficult to tell families that, oh, I have this relationship and I want to get married to this person. Or there's certainly maybe like also a middle ground where you meet someone, but then the families have to approve of them. So it's not necessarily arranged marriage, but there's a very important component of it, of the families being involved. And if we allow for that middle ground, then I think it's much more fluid. It's not like 95, 5%, 90%, 10%.
So in different classes, the percentage is quite different.
I think so. I would think so.
So what's the different?
What's different?
Yeah.
I think priorities for different families. For some families, like where a person comes from, what kind of family they come from, what kind of job they are doing, everything is very, very, very important. Whereas for others, a job might be very important, but their which strata of society they belong to, whether it is class or caste, that might not matter so much. But I think these are still very, very important factors, even in like upper middle class or like societies and situations. Because I know I have friends who like they met other people in university, but they know that their families won't be okay with them knowing that they might want to get married or things like that.
So do you think the higher class or the middle class, they are more prefer the free love marriage, and the lower class, they are more arranged marriage?
Not necessarily, because it's also like if you're from a particular class, then there are higher chances you'll also meet someone from that class or that caste. So automatically, even when you're looking for love, you'll try to find someone who ticks as many boxes as you can. Like if there's A and B, and one person doesn't tick some boxes, like, oh yeah, my parents would not approve of their background, of which caste they are from or which religion they are from or things like that, and there's someone else who ticks those boxes, then you're most probably going to choose the second option.
Sure. Does everyone in India has to accept the arranged marriage? Naturally arranged.
What would you mean by that?
I mean, does anyone has the right to refuse it?
Of course, as in, sure, of course you can refuse, but it is very difficult, I think, like especially for women to
Okay.
say that no, we certainly don't want to marry. I think just like in any other places where women's rights are still developing, I think even here it is quite possible, and there are so many instances of women standing up and saying that no, we refuse to go through with this, or being able to make choices to get estranged from a family and go with someone that they love or wish to marry. But at the same time, I think many social factors make it very
Yes.
difficult.
It's a social pressure.
Yeah, social pressure. And even for men, I think there are many expectations. If you're the oldest child and you're a man in a family, then you have to get married so your sisters can get married. Otherwise, maybe it's difficult for your sisters to get married because there are such social norms.
Mm-hmm. And in some cultures, romantic love is romantic love, and marriage is marriage.
Mhm.
So it sounds like very different between these two things. So we are wondering that in India, is the romantic love the premise of marriage?
I don't think so. Not necessarily.
Not necessarily.
Yeah.
Okay. So in many cases we just think we are proper.
Mm?
We are suitable for each other,
Mm.
so we can marry. Instead of that, we love each other, so we can marry.
Yeah, I think love is something that can develop in arranged marriages too, but I certainly don't think it's been a prerequisite for many marriages.
Okay, okay. So it's sort of like romantic love. Sounds like a very westernized definition, right?
Uh, I don't know. I don't think so. I think people can definitely love each other, and you see it with especially conversations of, um, like queer relationships, and not just straight heterosexual relationships, where people have to face multiple challenges to be able to love the person
Yes,
that they
yes.
want to and express that. So, and I don't think that's only existed in the West. I think that's existed in all cultures, and it's only now that people are really trying to talk about it, get it legalized, institutionalized. I think there's a big court case going on in India about legalizing same-sex marriage because you can't get life insurance for your partner, you can't leave your property to your partner, and things like that. And I don't know what the situation is like in China, but I know multiple countries are facing these challenges, and not always very well, in the sense that the general there seems to be the idea that the masses are against such notions of legalizing queer relationships, except it is something that people either don't have the choice because you don't choose to be born the way you are born,
Yes.
or you simply need these frameworks to protect your rights and to have the rights that you are like you deserve.
That's very interesting.
Yeah, and what do you think is the most important thing in marriage? So yeah, well, before we get married, we may can consider different elements like the wealth, like whether I like him or not, like the personality, like the social status. So something like that. Not only this. So what do you think is the most important elements for getting into marriage in India?
In India?
Yeah, generally.
I think, like I was saying before, depends on, like, even when it comes to love marriages, there might be certain things that make it much more easier. That a family will always be concerned about what kind of security is the person you want to marry, what kind of security can they provide you, or so I think those kind of things are important in
Security.
India. Hmm?
Security.
Security in terms of it could be financial security,
Yes, yes.
or it could be like if a priority is emotional compatibility or personalities, or even like where's the person from? Are you going to shift to another province, or where are you both going to settle? Or like, are you going to settle in a city that's completely new to both of you, or new to only one of you? So I think there are various factors that people consider.
So same religion is also very important.
I think so, because religious marriages are still difficult for a lot of people to go through with. Doesn't mean they don't happen. They also happen where, um, like, I don't know how often they happen, but they certainly do happen, and that's been the nature of India. It being having multiple religions, so people do marry across religions. But it's another challenge that a couple has to face, I think. That,
Yes. So
mm.
if they are across religion, they will face some problems or challenges.
I think so, depending on what kind of families they come from.
I think this is also a very different thing from China because
Yeah.
we don't have very strong religions here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So do you also have lines that might make it difficult for someone to marry someone? Like, I don't know, maybe in terms of provinces or where
Yeah, I
someone comes
think
from.
in China, different places, maybe some province want you to marry the near places people. Yeah, so you don't have a very huge difference, and it is easier for you your two families to communicate. Yeah, but some places are not. Yeah, even some places are only want you to marry the next street or next very small areas people. So what about in India, the distance or the?
I think
the
really
places?
depends. It can be city to city, village to village, especially some communities would like someone to marry within their community, not just religious but also like within their caste or within because maybe it's not even possible to marry someone of a different caste because it's hierarchical, right? Can you marry up or down or who will be accepted? Then there's
So
also
it is only possible for a person to get married to the same class.
when you say only possible, it doesn't mean that people haven't challenged it or people haven't gone through with marriages that are against such kind of norms. Like when I say norms, I mean like widely held, passed down norms. But at the same time, also within different communities, like there might be a community that's like a different community, like Parsi community, the Marwadi community, like or different communities who might prefer that you meet someone from a similar background because then the values might be similar, life goals might be similar, and things like that.
What is the two community? Could you like write down?
Yeah, maybe I can write it to you later.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
So it is a common thing that both China and India are usually to marry the same background people.
Yeah, I think that's a mindset that is very slowly changing, and again depends. Like I have access only to urban areas, so while of course one way of thinking is that the more rural you go, the more conservative it might get. The other side of the thing is that the more rural you go, you see more women having to work. You see, as opposed to maybe urban areas, so you see different kinds of factors that you can't always accommodate for, and they affect the rigidity of rules of marriage, I guess.
The what of marriage?
The rules of marriage and who is
Ah.
following what, who can meet who.
So personally, for you, can you rank the different elements? What do you think is the most important thing?
For me personally,
Yeah.
for me personally, I think loving someone is very important to get married, certainly.
Ah, I see.
So is this related to you receive higher education?
Yeah.
I wouldn't put it as higher education, but certainly what entails education is you getting to meet more and more people, you getting access to different ideas
Yeah.
and spaces to challenge your previous beliefs and to explore new ones. So maybe that way it is related to education. But I think there are people who can be very educated and extremely conservative also, and extremely traditional and orthodox. Also people who don't have to be educated to know what they want.
So, like, what's your parents' attitude? Like, you marry someone.
I think my parents' attitude is that if I find someone that I want to marry, then they are quite okay with it. I'm sure there are boundaries that even they would find difficult to accept, but
They're still very difficult to accept.
no, I think I'm sure there might be some boundaries
Oh, I
that
see.
would be difficult for them to accept. I can't think of any, but again, that certainly depends to what kind of education they had, or like what kind of privileges they had. Like they've been able to travel, they've been able to study abroad, things like that.
Mhm.
So that all affects.
And in terms of the religion factor you mentioned before, we also wondering that if these factors be less important or less considered in more developed area or more developed city, could they be less considered?
I think it certainly depends. One of the things in urban areas and cities is that many of your identities are not as easily known as smaller places. In a smaller place, everyone might know what
Know each
family you're
other,
from.
yes.
So, what exactly is your rank in society? In larger spaces, you're able to conceal that if you want. You don't have to use a surname. You take up a different surname. So, that is a little bit more possible.
Okay.
So, I think it
Sure.
does affect many things.
So maybe we can come back to the first beginning question where so today we're gonna talk about the romantic love and we focus is on two perspectives. One is, as we said before, arranged marriage, and another one is homosexual marriage or this kind of love relationship. So a very simple beginning question is, what do you think of romantic love in your eyes or in Indian people's eyes?
I think it's someone that I very deeply care about. For me, romantic love might be someone I deeply care about, someone really enjoy spending time with, and also someone who can inspire me, because I think that is something that I think is important, or at least challenge me in different ways. That's my idea of love. I don't think it's necessarily an idea of romantic love, but it's difficult for me to, I guess, define what romantic is. Like, I think it could be different for different people. Like, someone gives me a very nice book as a gift. Like, if my partner would give me a very nice book, I could find that very romantic, but I don't think everyone would have to.
So is this movement a kind of impression of romantic love in India? To
What?
like send a book, like something like that?
I don't think it can be generalized to India. I think this is very
Very
certainly
personally.
just my personal
Okay.
opinion. I don't know what an Indian sense of romantic love is. I guess one good way to think about it is to watch a lot of popular movies and what is portrayed as romance there, how a person is expected to woo a woman or to say that they love them or like things like that. I don't know if there's any common notion in India of like romantic love. It would be very difficult because there are so many varied cultures even within India, so many varied traditions, and it is incredibly diverse, not just according to religion but also geographically and how cultures have developed. So it is difficult to give like this
Yes.
homogeneous idea.
Yes. We know that it's very hard to define what the romantic love is. So we're going to turn to another question is, what do you think the expression of love, romantic love? Maybe this is more specific.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like give you a flower or case or give
Yeah.
a chocolate.
Yeah.
Can you take some examples?
Yeah, and we want to know if the nowadays the younger generation and the older generation, are
Yeah.
there some difference, some
I think
concrete actions?
in previous generations, giving a kiss is a good example because I think in previous generations they are much more conservative about physical showing of affection. Certainly, very little public display of affection, especially outside household, outside households. Even inside, when you grow up with family, you may not always see your parents hugging or parents saying "I love you" to each other because like when I think of the Odia, like my language of my province, or Hindi translations of "I love you," they are generally not words that come up always in conversation. So it's definitely more through gestures, gestures of like might be through food or the way someone welcomes you or the way conversations happen or what one does for each other. So where some performative acts become, I think, very important.
Oh, so as a parents, they don't usually say "I love you," this kind of sweet words to express their love.
To each other, like I haven't heard them say it. I haven't heard them in English certainly, or in Odia or Hindi or anything like that. But again, I've never felt like they don't love each other.
So what's their expression of their own love to each other? What do you think?
I think depends. It really depends, like what they do for each other, how they help each other around the house, outside the house, things like that.
Yeah, I think this is quite similar to our Chinese
Yes.
parents.
Huh?
Yeah, our grandparents.
Yeah.
It's very similar. But what about the younger generation, your generation?
I think
Is there
again,
some change?
my generation depends on which class
Yeah.
I'm from, right? So if upper middle class, I think maybe more vocal, influenced a lot by perhaps social media or how society is developing. So I think there might be various different notions. Like ideas of maybe two people working doesn't mean a compromise on your life as a couple or anything like that. It's just to survive better in this economy, two people working makes more sense, or things like that. Um, More physical, maybe. If you go out, maybe you might see younger people being more comfortable physically around each other, but still very, very carefully, very cautiously, because you're still in a society that isn't used to such displays. And doesn't matter which generation, like similar generations might also object to it, depending on how they are brought up, how they grow up, and what they grow up seeing.
So,
So you mean the body touch is not popular, but it is not unacceptable, right?
Yeah, I think. What do you mean when you say unacceptable?
I mean that, like in some area like Middle East, people cannot do body touch on the street, so it is totally forbidden.
Yeah, I don't think like I haven't checked up on the law like exactly, but I personally wouldn't feel very comfortable with physical gestures of affection in the public, because I would be worried how someone would react. Someone might react violently, someone might really not appreciate it, and I wouldn't feel safe. Think perhaps women more so. It doesn't mean no one does it. It just I do think there is a risk associated with it, an unfortunate one. But I don't think it is outlawed the way the in accordance with the examples you mentioned.
so if there are two young men and a young woman, they are kissing in public, what the other people's reaction to the scene?
Think they might look, or they might very obviously not look, or
They try to hide and
yeah, really try to ignore, but definitely get affected by it.
So what do they thinking of watching this kind of shame for them, or they will blame them this kind of behavior?
I think some people might feel embarrassed. Some people will just not understand why they need to do this outside a room, outside in a public space. Yeah, some people might judge them that, oh, they're not brought up properly, so they don't know, like, this is not Indian culture, this is really against. Yeah.
So they won't think, oh, they are very love each other. They think it is not a proper behavior
way.
in Indian society.
I think so. I think that might be one way of thinking.
I see. So are there any questions about the arranged marriage? Anything left to me?
Yeah, like you said, like your grandparents, they just see each other's picture, and maybe for your parents, they met each other. So do you think like the arranged marriage had some change?
Oh, certainly, there are some changes, but again, depends like where you're talking about. In urban areas, how it's arranged. Maybe you're expected to get to know each other a little bit. I'm sure there are places where it might still be similar, that you don't have too much of a choice in who you get married to, because other priorities like which social rank are you from or religion might be more important. Yeah.
So can we conclude that the in terms of arranged marriage is very different from in terms of rural areas and urban areas?
Rural, urban, sure, but more across classes, across class, across religion. I think there are various differences. It's difficult to say that, oh yeah, this difference of like is only because of this between this caste and this caste, because caste and class do not have like a linear relationship in India. I think they are very like intertwined.
I
Like
see.
just because someone is from a higher caste doesn't mean they're from a higher economic class, and or that because they're from a higher caste they have they are highly literate, or just because someone is not highly literate doesn't mean that
And
they will.
literate means?
Literate means like proficiency in writing, reading, literacy.
see.
Like one thing I am
see.
concerned about is confusing literacy with education.
see.
People might be very, very literate, very, very well qualified educationally, but they might still have some ideas that are very problematic in society. So I think
So-
it's all very mixed up.
I see. So we can not only very simply to say, if you are upper class, you may more prefer to a free love marriage, or if you are lower class.
Yeah.
So it's very different.
I think so.
Intertwined with.
Yeah, because you have to see how marriages in the families of rich business people work, for example,
Yeah.
where like two big business families might find their children marrying each other, and it's not always easy to know did they really. It's possible they are like from those circles you meet those people, and that's why they fell in love. But there's always a possibility that economically it makes so much sense to have a merger and things like that. So that their like caste or like education might have little to do with it, right? Like so,
So the most important
or a
thing
lot to do with it.
is classes, religion, and where they are born, and the education. Can we conclude that?
Yeah, I think if you want a list of factors that affect
Yeah.
it, then certainly class,
Yeah.
caste, religion, region, education, sure.
The second one is
Caste and class, like upper class, upper middle
Ah,
class,
I see.
economic class, economic
I
class.
see. I think we are over with the arranged marriage questions.
I have one last question.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm thinking about this question, but maybe it's out of our question list.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, is arranged marriage less possible to engage divorce?
I think many people might certainly hope to believe so, that because there are many things that are considered by a lot of people, then divorce rates might be lower. But I think there's a lot of stigma around divorce still, so
Mhm.
it's difficult to say that it's only arranged marriages that lead to divorces. I think there might be a certain stereotype that they got divorced. See, this is what happens if you have love marriages. But I think statistically, I have no idea if that has any grounding.
Okay.
I also have one new
Yeah.
question. That's for the younger generation. Most of them they want to choose arranged marriage or free love marriage. They think which one is better.
I think it's a combination of both, that they're if not opposed to meeting people who their families think might be good for them,
Yeah.
but they certainly want to get to know the person a little more before they decide that they can marry them or not.
So what's the reason for people who choose the arranged marriage?
Difficult to meet people.
Uh,
Yeah, just same struggles that single people face all around the world, I think.
But won't they worried about the person that their parents recommend to him or her?
What do you mean?
Because sometimes as I know for the arranged marriage, people
Mhm.
usually to marriage people they didn't recognize before.
Mm-hmm.
So is there a risk that we will not get along with each other?
Yeah, that's what I'm
because-
saying. I think if you ask a preference, which
Yeah.
is what you're asking, then most people might prefer or not most people, but a preference. One of the preferences might be that it's fine if my family suggests, oh, this is person X, and maybe you can marry him. And the reply might be that sure, but let me meet him a couple of times. Let me see what kind of person he is.
So
And-
this is quite common to meet a couple of times before.
Yes, again, what setting will differ from family to family. Like, oh yeah, just go for a coffee. You're back. How was it? Good or bad? As compared to like meeting multiple
So
times.
if like a woman, they think, oh, I don't think he's good.
Mm.
It is she has the right to say no to the person.
I think socially speaking, I think it might be difficult, but I think it's certainly like not outlawed or unheard of that someone might say that no, not at all. On to the next one.
But so in these circumstances, the meetup seems useless because women don't have right to say no.
Yeah, that is true. As in, I think they have to make a very strong case in when they say no, and I think it's certainly not easy to say no. But I don't think. But why I say that it exists is because I think it happens
Yeah.
at times, and I think maybe gradually it's becoming more and more easy to understand that you're not saying no to marriage, but you're saying no to marriage to a certain person.
You mentioned gradually. What's the time gradually from your generation?
When I say gradually, I'm thinking particularly of a generation around me, slightly older.
So for our parents' generation, it is not easy, but for your generation, more and more people do this.
I think so.
I see. So what if a man say no to a woman?
I think for men, like as with many other things, it's more easier.
So the hierarchy is also very patriarchy society.
I think that patriarchy has had a huge influence on Indian society. I think, as it has had on multiple societies, but I think it is, you could say that it is easier for a man to perhaps say no, than a woman.
I want to ask, do you think there are some advantage about arranged marriage?
I think so, like especially for people who find it difficult to meet new people, people who have had bad experiences trying to meet people on their own, maybe certain checks and balances like your parents or your relatives vouching for someone adds in this layer of security and trust that is very difficult to find when you meet someone randomly or like through someone that you don't trust. So there are many advantages, I'm sure.
Like it might be more reliable or to compare with.
I think reliability is something that people would say yes, like that's one of the reasons an arranged marriage is okay because
Yes. Maybe you don't like each other, but your parents like each other.
Yeah.
so then you can figure out from there. But sometimes that might be one of the reasons that families get along.
Yes, I think it's more stable.
Mm.
So do you think, by your observation, most of the people in arranged marriage, are they happy or not? Do they think it is a good choice? I have a very stable family, I have a very happy family, or they think it is a wrong decision?
I think it's very difficult to have those conversations with the
Yeah.
generations above me.
Yeah.
And I don't think for the previous generation marriage was a choice. Marriage had to happen. I
see.
think one thing perhaps is that marriage is gradually becoming a choice for at least some class of people. Do we want to get married and on what terms? I think I've had conversations with people who think that who have many regrets that because of marriage they weren't able to do many things. But that doesn't mean that they regret marrying the person itself. It's just the social institution of marriage that they realize has handicapped them so much.
So.
I have another question. Is you mentioned your cousin, they are all have the free love marriage. So how do they met their husband? Like in school or?
Two of them have met them. One of them in university, one of them in their company, one of them is the other scenario I was talking about where they met through the family but then are very happy to meet each other, things like that. Yeah.
Okay.
So let's move to
Homosexual
homosexual
Mhm.
part. So what's the current development of same-sex, the homosexual marriage or relationship in contemporary China? India, sorry.
I know you have to tell me about China.
Is that
It-
okay to ask you this question?
Yeah, sure. I just don't know too much, so I hope I don't give you wrong information. Or you can use it as an example that this is what is actually in India, this is what someone from India thinks it is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's quite interesting.
Right? So, I don't know, is it legal in China, same-sex marriage?
No.
No.
So maybe this is a similarity.
Yeah, but in India right now there's a court case happening to legalize same-sex marriage. Now, what the government is arguing is that most of the people in Indian society are against the idea that marriage can be between the same sex. But what the opposing side is arguing is that it's the right of people to get married to whoever they love and whoever they want to marry. So there I think the idea of marriage, love, gender and sex are quite intertwined with each other. The lawyer made an excellent case saying that I can't find my partner life insurance, I can't give a property. There are so many social securities that I can't avail of because you're not legalizing same-sex marriage. So I don't know what if it is true that majority of Indians, like some institutions would have us believe majority of Indians oppose it. They think that same-sex marriage is unnatural. I think it has a lot to do with politics and religion, and how if a certain sect of people believe very deeply that something is wrong, then how they are able to convey that message.
So most people think like the same sex relationship, it is a wrong thing, or they respect this kind of relationship.
I think a lot of people morally judge people who are in homosexual relationships, or anything that is not heterosexual is judged. But it is funny because I think there are many concepts of gender being fluid in Indian mythology, and so religious like mythology connected to religion, and for example, the case of transgenders in India is something that is different from most of the world, because there have been it's a third gender that you can take for a while now, and religiously they are always they have a certain position. Does that translate into social security and rights? Not always, but it's a very different perception from, I think, the rest of the world. So a lot of different factors, like with the previous answers.
So what people's view on the transgender people?
What do you mean by people's view?
What do you think the Indian people see this kind of person? They think
Like in China, there has some celebrities or famous person, they're transgender. Like in India, do they have same?
I think so. There are various stereotypes associated with them. There are various religious powers associated with some of them. There are a lot of famous activists and artists who are transgendered. Yeah, there's a big religious festival kind of called the Kumbh Mela, which happens in Varanasi, now called officially, I think, there's a new name of that city, I think, I cannot remember. But anyways,
Is a celebrity. Is a celebrity.
no, I'm saying that this religious festival, for the first time, there was a special section devoted only for transgenders. So these kind of and that is influenced by the fact that there's a ruling party that believes in the importance of Hindu religion to Indian culture. Perhaps it might be a misplaced belief, but this is how it plays out at times.
So if there is a person who is a gay in a family, are the family's parents think it is a shame or a bad thing? For most of the
Mainstream.
I think
Yeah,
for a lot of
generally
people it is very difficult to
Accept.
tell their families that they might be gay or queer, and certainly a lot of social stigma attached to it. So you have to hang out in small circles and be careful about your identity and being judged, certainly.
So it is really hard for people to admit that they are gay.
Come
or
out.
Yeah, it is. I think it is difficult for people to come out to certain people in their life. Yeah.
I think in China is the same situation.
Yeah, it's quite similar.
Yeah.
But in China, nowadays, there are more and more people like to admit that they are gay or something
Yeah.
like that. So I'm wondering if there are a difference between the older generation and the younger generation, the time difference, differentiate.
I think with my generation maybe more open to people's identities,
Yeah.
but yeah.
To what extent?
It's still changing and developing. I think again depends on where you are, urban area, rural area, and education or like what spaces you have access to. I think all of that affects who is open to what idea.
So like in China, I think our generation would think we can respect the same-sex relationship. So what in your generation, the younger generation, think of the
Difficult to say, because I have friends who are gay. I have friends who absolutely respect everyone's identities and like, yeah. But I think there are also friends who are still struggling to understand different people. So definitely friends who are conservative, even from like from the same university space, from the same circles. So it's difficult, and also as a straight person, I can't really understand the stigma that queer people have to face. So like, it's difficult for me to say if they feel like our generation is more accepting of the identity, or they think that it's still all shit and they can't be open with any generation. So yeah, it's difficult to say.
Yeah, like maybe like in our generation, we're in the school and I witnessed some like LGBT person, they're being bullied by other persons,
Yeah.
other people. So
Yeah, right? Still,
yeah.
right? Yeah, exactly.
So in your background, what do you think the percentage between the people who would respect the gay or another, they don't agree with this kind of relationship?
Oh,
The
I think-
percentage would be
I think very skewed. I think like still,
just your personal speaking.
yeah. Personally, again, it's so it's difficult to think of a number, because if I think of my parents, do they have friends who are gay? I don't know. When I tell them, would I tell them some of my friends are gay? Maybe not, because I don't want my friends to feel like judged by them. I don't want my parents to judge my friends, because then I'll fight with them. And also, while knowing that they grew up in a certain society, and I would think of my parents as being very progressive and very liberal, but still, I don't know of their personal opinions. I know they would really respect gay rights activists and people like that, but if they want someone in their own social circles, I don't know. I think they might get a little conservative when it comes to that. Or yeah, maybe I need to give them more credit. I don't know. So as for number, I don't know, maybe what the government is saying is true, that maybe as high as 99%, and you have to, because it's India, right? So like even 1% is like maybe 1 million, 2 million people. So
yeah.
even like that way, it's still a huge number who might be okay with such relationships and identities. But maybe the majority certainly will take time, and it doesn't help that institutionally, legally, these things are outlawed or like not accepted.
So we can conclude that very few people can living as a gay in India, the society.
I think yes, people are certainly very cautious about their identities. So even if they are, it might be difficult to tell, because if you are vocal about your identity, you open yourself up to some kind of bullying, some kind of judgment, various kinds of problems.
So even for your parents, the very progressive person, they also be very conservative to this kind of relationship. They're worried about.
I think so. They would
Identity.
worry about what happens, what is the future, what society will say.
Do you have the, like India had the Pride March?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah,
Is that
India has-
very often or?
It does happen often. It does happen like maybe once a year or whatever, multiple times. And people do go to them, but again, if you think in the context of how many people India has and how many people are going to these marches, it's a certain minority.
Like in Shanghai, there also have some march, but it was forbidden recently.
Really?
Yeah. Don't know because of COVID or because of the other reason.
Yeah. Since the time limit, I think we can ask the last question. Yeah. So, are there any couples who would stake to marriage if it is not approved by their family? They'll quit or they'll continue to stick to their relationship?
Sure, there are many people who do that. They take the step of like getting estranged from their family, like disconnecting from their family because they choose to be with the person that they love. So that's
Oh.
yeah.
So this phenomenon is common in younger generation or?
No, I've heard of cases, I think, even in the older generation where people get distant because of certain choices they make. So it's certainly not unheard of. It's just how much power, financial or social privilege do you have to be able to execute that will? Like, sure, you might be a person with a job and a house and then you can afford to do it. But if you're someone who cannot, then it's much more difficult.
So nowadays would be more number than the older generation for people.
I guess, but maybe also if times are changing a little bit, then families are also more amicable to understanding. So maybe the situation has to be created less. That's one possibility too.
Yeah, but both have existed this kind of phenomenon. Right?
What do you mean by both?
The both older generation and the younger generation. they
Yeah,
all-
it certainly happened.
I see. So, do you have anything else? Because we are, it's already 4 o'clock.
Do you think free love has some disadvantage or advantage?
Oh no, I think I'm a big advocate of it. It's something that I would wish for myself, to only be with someone that I love.
It's very
disadvan-
romantic.
So disadvantages, not sure. Like the same disadvantages with any relationship, I guess that comes with it. So it's difficult to think of like disadvantages. It's easier to think of advantages of arranged situations than disadvantages of what is like being free to love everyone. Because love itself, I feel like, is already a positive concept that we are talking about.
Yeah.
Difficult to think of disadvantages to it for me.
Yeah, I think this is all the end of our
Cool.
interview.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you a lot.
Thanks for sharing.
Yeah, so now
Yeah.
we are